Paul, congratulations on your new series for Apple TV Plus, Onside, Major League Soccer.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know what? I love watching these sports series, especially the behind the scene moments and personal stories. But could you tell us, in your words, on how this project actually came about?
Yeah, I mean, it was a long, all these shows are a long process, or they're a long process, and then suddenly they go very quickly. We've been talking to the MLS for a while. We had a really good relationship with those guys, and then I think once they entered into this bigger relationship with Apple, and we'd worked with Apple before on a couple of sports things and a few other shows. We had a very good relationship with the Apple TV guys. So it suddenly just felt very natural to make a show like this. It was going to showcase the MLS in a slightly different way from the live stuff. It made sense for us to produce it because we do a lot of these shows, and we had a great relationship with the MLS. And then and then it moves very quickly, and then suddenly you're in it and you're making it, and you don't really have time to think particularly. You're at games and you're like, what are we filming here and what are we doing and who are these people? So yeah, it's like I say, they're a long time. You talk about them for a long time, and then very quickly you're making them, and then very quickly you're midway through the season, and you're like, oh my god, have we got 8 episodes here? Have we got? And listen, I was really pleased with the way it turned out. I was really pleased with the breadth of story that we were able to tell in the league. And I think it does a really great job of showcasing everything that's great about what's happening in the MLS at the moment.
Now, it's a very long season, and 8 episodes doesn't seem like very much. So, how did you actually pick and choose the individuals or even the teams? Because you're talking about hundreds of individuals and 29 teams, and you could easily come up with 1,000 stories.
Yeah, I mean, you know, any kind of filmmaking is all about choices, and you have to, you can't, you don't have the resources, budgetary or manpower to cover, every player of every team. So, you have to make kind of informed choices. And I mean, we looked at it, the opening game. We looked at opening weekend of like, okay, what game should we think about kind of covering there? And obviously the Galaxy Miami game kind of leapt out because on one hand you had like the kind of the aristocracy of the MLS in Galaxy and their history from Beckham and Gerrard and Ibrahimovic and Keane and all those kind of great play, Landon Donovan that they'd had at the Galaxy. And then on the other side, you had the new upstarts in Inter Miami that owned by Beckham. So you had that kind of touch point. Obviously Messi, playing for Miami. So that felt like a very natural place to start the series. And then you sort of look, and then you look, and you're like, well, there's this rivalry that I think probably nobody but the hardcore MLS fan really knows about, like Columbus, Ohio versus FC Cincinnati. Like who had a clue that was such a hotbed rivalry? That's a nice story to tell. And then things happen. We got a call to say, hey, there's this 14-year-old kid that's probably going to make his debut for Philadelphia over the course of the season. Do you think we can make space in the show for that? And listen, I was kind of skeptical, and I was like, I don't know, a 14-year-old kid. It doesn't, do we, A, is he really any good, and B, do we really want to put that additional pressure on a 14-year-old kid? And then you meet Kevin Sullivan, and you're like, oh my god, this kid has to be in the show. Like he's such a force of nature at 14 years old, and listen, if he hopefully goes on to become a global superstar, what an incredible moment for us to document. So it's things like that. You just some things you're making deliberate choices. Some things just kind of emerge and are just unmissable and have to be in the series. And I think we were very fortunate that we had a lot of those along the way.
Yeah, Cabin was a terrific story. That was an excellent choice. Now, how many production teams did you actually use through this entire process? And then I guess the game footage. I'm assuming a lot of the game footage you actually used from the MLS itself.
Yeah, so you're very fortunate. These kind of leagues, now have huge amount of cameras at any one game, and again, it speaks to when we make a show like this, we don't have unlimited resources. So yeah, the MLS were great partners. They were always there to to help us supplement the footage that we were kind of shooting, and they're obviously at every game where we weren't at every game, so we could lean on that. Our production teams are always smaller than people expect them to be, because I think it speaks to kind of the geography of where you're trying to make these shows. You're often you want to be in very kind of intimate, closed spaces, dressing rooms, boardrooms, on buses, on flights, in people's homes, and so you really can't be huge crews. You want to really distill it down to the smallest amount of crew that you can, so that you can just be that kind of fly on the wall, and you can almost melt into the background and document the story in the most authentic way. When you start turning up with big crews and they've got lights and who's that person? That's when you sort of you lose that kind of intimacy that you need to do these shows well. So I think people are always very surprised at how small our crews are sometimes. Sometimes three people, a camera, sound, and a producer. That's all that we'll use. On Drive to Survive, sometimes it's been two people. So yeah, we really try and distill our crews down to the basics of what we need.
Were there limits to your access with Major League Soccer?
I think I mean, not limits in the terms of, hey, you can't go there or you can't do this. I think there's always limit. I think there's always, I don't think I've ever worked on one of these shows where you get, or even you expect 24/7 access, across the season. There's always limits to what people want to show of themselves. I think, and you can't, I don't think you can ever make people do anything that they don't want to do, just because the league, hey, this show's really important to us, so you've got to give the box to box crew 24 hours. It doesn't work like that. It's always like, it's our job to make people feel like they want to be part of the show, and they have something to say. And that doesn't mean that it's always going to be an incredibly positive thing. The great thing about these shows is showing the kind of the ups and the downs, and it's our job in those moments where maybe it's not going so well to make teams or players understand, like, no, this has to be part of your story, because if the audience doesn't understand that low, they're never going to root for you in kind of the high, and so it's all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's not, these shows are never, you know hey, just turn up with your camera and shoot anything you want, and do anything you want, and be anywhere you want. It never quite works like that. But that doesn't mean to say, we had the MLS on our shoulder saying you can film that, but you can't film that. They let us make the version of the show that we wanted to make. They were incredibly supportive partners in that way.
I know it's a lot. A lot of these stories are actually fascinating, especially negotiations or behind the scene moments or even personal moments itself. So, like myself, I really enjoyed season one. And is there a possibility of season two, especially the fact that you could easily fit in the new story of a expansion team of San Diego, which I'm trying to get tickets for right now.
Listen, we always want to do more, and I think if Apple and MLS want us to continue, we'll happily continue. And listen, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of untold stories to tell within the league. There's a lot of stories that I think we could continue from season one. I think people will be curious to see how some of the clubs continue. So I would love to do a season two.
Well said, Paul. Thank you very much for speaking to us about Onside Major League Soccer. Everyone should definitely check it out on Apple TV Plus. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thank you.